Today, I'm going to share what is probably the most significant aspect, the most significant factor that separates those who truly rise from the rest of the crowd. Probably the most critical aspect is understanding that without application, there is no empowerment. It's the factor that causes some to begin and continue to grow in God's favor, to begin to experience His blessing, move in His empowerment, make their impact, literally make their life meaningful. And it doesn't mean there are no challenges, that's unrealistic, but they also begin to grow in the confidence of His truth working through them to face every situation. And as I remind us on a regular basis, that revelation is not complete, that it can be evaluated by, is it a demonstrated reality, a reflexive outpouring from our life? The deception so often in this is pervasive. See, natural revelation is when we recognize truth, wisdom, whatever it may be. And at a natural level, that revelation has only entered into our mind, that soul man, mind, will, and emotion. And the challenge becomes so often when we recognize it as that truth, that wisdom, whatever it may be, the assumption is we've got it. And therein lies the fallacy, the weakness. See, revelation should be supernatural, that it's moving it from the mind to the spirit man, where it now begins to produce the life and hope that is embedded in that truth and in that wisdom, that it literally becomes a reflexive outpouring. Eventually, it requires no effort, but the process of moving it from a concept, something we understand, to something that is real and produces life, that requires some effort. But once we do, once we make it part of our identity, once we truly own that, it produces that life and hope on its own. Again, without application, there is no empowerment. And so let's talk about how some ways to begin to apply that truth, that wisdom, wherever you source that wisdom, whether God reveals it to you through His Word, or as He will frequently do, God will reveal wisdom from others, whether it's a pastor, a minister, a speaker, whatever it may be. And don't let the conduit, don't let the avenue God brings that wisdom, the person He brings it through, don't let that diminish the value. One of the great lessons in life I've learned is you can glean wisdom from young people who literally just have accepted Jesus, and He can still speak wisdom through them. So don't look at the avenue it's come from and allow that or cause you to minimize the value of it. But recognize that truth, recognize that wisdom, but then begin the process of application. And application frequently requires some response on our part. James tells us if you desire wisdom, ask and believe. So it requires a response that we initially ask. So whatever that truth is, that wisdom that God has revealed to you, does it require some first step to activate it? But then, once it does, then step two is obviously we have to believe it. So often I talk to people, and what really, when you boil it down to what it comes to, is they like the idea and they're waiting to see, rather than applying faith to it, the belief and expectation that that's truth, God said it, I'm looking to see the reality of it. But once we now have applied faith, then one of the most powerful things, and one of those that is so often overlooked in the West, is to literally speak it, that personalize it, speak that truth, personalize it, put your name on it, because the process of speaking it is retraining our soul man. It's rewriting the hard drive, so to speak, of our life. It's overriding preset ideas, opinions, and concepts and replacing them with God's truth. And in the process, we're aligning our soul man with our spirit man who is in perfect union with God. Begin to speak it. Literally, the word meditate, when it talks about meditating on the word, it literally means to mutter. Imagine walking around and just talking to yourself. That's the picture of meditating on the word. Take that truth, especially the more powerful, the more important, the more valuable it is to you, and continue to speak it until not only is it second nature, but you have every confidence of the reality of it in your life. It is, again, a very overlooked aspect of application, of taking ownership, making something part of our identity, is literally to speak it. When the New Testament talks about confess, it literally means to speak in agreement with God's truth. So whether we're using it in the context of recognizing we've blown it, or we can also apply that just as strongly to the aspect of recognizing the value in God's promise, His truth, His wisdom, and so on. And so confess and believe. It is part of that whole process of retraining our mind. And then from there, the final step is begin to ask God, ask the Holy Spirit to show you ways to apply this, to own it, to make it a greater reality in your life. And there's a side benefit to that. The most powerful thing you can do in your life is begin to grow in the recognition of the leading of the Holy Spirit. It is something a little unique for everyone. It's something I literally pray for my two sons daily, that they would grow in the recognition of the voice, the leading of the Holy Spirit, because that is a level of empowerment. Those that are led by the Spirit, they are the sons and daughters of the living God. It's something we should all desire to a greater degree. In the process of asking God, asking the Holy Spirit, how can I apply this to a greater degree? How can I make this a greater reality? Also begins to lead us down a path to, again, greater, more recognized revelation in our life, but also growing in that confidence of the leading of the Holy Spirit. So again, the most significant aspect, the most significant factor, the key that separates that small minority that rise from the rest of the crowd among God's people, the most significant factor is the power of application. Because there is no empowerment without application. That just head knowledge has some but limited value. But once it is a reality, once it's part of our identity, it automatically produces that life and hope. It begins to separate you from the crowd. It's part of that holiness. And in the process, you begin to recognize God's favor in your life, His blessings at work, your empowerment. And you should grow in the confidence of the ability to face every challenge, because it's the recognition that God's truth is at work through you. So begin the process of application, turning natural revelation into supernatural revelation that automatically produces the outcome in your life. And while it takes some effort, it takes some application, once you truly own it, it becomes effortless, and it will empower your life in whole new ways.